Welcome class. Today I chose to speak on concussions. The reason I chose to speak on concussions is because, as you guys know, I've had 2 concussions in my life. Also, right now there's a lot of controversy in the world about concussions in sports. For example, the NFL, that movie that just came out, it's all about concussions. People are wondering, what are the long-term effects and how severe are they? So let's start out with just describing what a concussion is. According to the Centers for Disease Control, a concussion is a type of traumatic brain injury caused by a bump, blow, or jolt to the head, or by a hit to the body that causes the head and brain to move rapidly back and forth. So basically, anything that causes your brain to move and smack into the walls of your skull. What causes a concussion? It's pretty simple. You have any violent blow to your head or neck or upper body can cause your brain to move back and forth, bruise, and bleed. Sudden acceleration or deceleration of the head, or a forceful shaking motion of the upper body. The most prevalent causes, they found that sports are a very high cause of concussion. The highest sport is football, and it goes down in this order. It starts with football, boys ice hockey, girls soccer, boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, boys soccer, boys wrestling, and then girls basketball. So it is kind of surprising. Everybody who makes fun of girls soccer, you have a few girls soccer fans in the audience.
I wasn't surprised.
They're tougher than the boys. Types of symptoms, you've got 2. You can get either immediate symptoms, which happen the day of, or you have the delayed symptoms that could happen up to 2 weeks to a month afterwards. It's important to understand that just because it doesn't happen immediately doesn't mean it's not serious or related to the head trauma. Different types of symptoms to be aware of. You've got headache or feeling of pressure in the head, temporary loss of consciousness, confusing feeling as if in a fog, amnesia, ripping in the ears, nauseas, vomiting, slurred speech, etc. Many things like that. One thing to be careful of is symptoms in infants may be a little bit different, and when an infant has a concussion, it's not easily diagnosed because they can't describe very well how they're feeling. So things to be worrisome of are appearing dazed, listlessness or tiring easily, irritability or crankiness, loss of balance and unsteady walking, crying excessively, change in eating or sleeping patterns. So basically, every act that a child does can mean a concussion. Prevention. People ask, what's the best way to prevent a concussion? The number one way, pretty simple, wear a helmet. Anything that you could possibly have head trauma, the best way to prevent, wear a helmet. What should you do? What should you do if you get a concussion? The number one thing, the most important, is go immediately to a doctor. The reason is they have a bunch of neurological tests that include testing the vision, hearing, strength, balance, coordination, and they also have brain imaging techniques like a CT scan or a computerized tomography. It's important to go get it checked because of the bleeding in the brain. You want to make sure that there's no bleeding or bruising because that can cause long-term effects in the future. Treatment of a concussion. The most important treatment and best treatment is going to be rest. They're going to require you to lay down for a week to 2 weeks. The less stimulus, the better. For example, they're not going to want you to have any physical exertion, including sports or any vigorous activities, until you have no symptoms. Limit activities that require thinking, including TV, video games, reading, etc. And then the long-term effects. Damage to the brain caused by concussion can last for decades after the original head trauma, according to research presented at American Association for Advancement of Science. After symptoms have gone, you're not 100% back to normal. Some long-term effects that are pretty common are depression, headaches, cognitive functioning. For example, there have been a lot of studies shown that men who play football, about a couple years after they quit playing football, they have uncontrollable crying outbreaks that randomly they'll just be sitting there and they'll start bawling, or they'll be very depressed, and they have linked that back to damage caused by concussions. In conclusion, concussions are very dangerous and should be taken seriously. And beware of any symptoms after a head trauma for weeks in advance. Always be careful of any nausea, headaches, or dizziness. Visit a doctor after any head trauma and be aware of the appropriate treatment. And then be safe out there and make sure you wear a helmet. Thank you. Any questions? Jordan.
Is there like a specific time in your life, like whether you're a child or you're older, that you're more vulnerable to get concussions, or is it pretty even throughout?
When you're a child, it takes a lot less in order to cause a concussion. They're not as strong, so their necks move around a lot easier and cause the brain to move. When you're older, you're generally in a position to get concussions easier because you're doing more strenuous activities. But the level of severity is equal in both cases. Chelsea?
I've heard that once you've had a concussion, that it's easier to get another one. Do you know if that's true or not?
There have been studies done on it. There's nothing that says that it is easier, but there have been a lot of cases where people who have got concussions tend to get concussions again in their life. So there hasn't been anything that's 100% set in stone, but there is research out there going on. Anything else?
Yeah, does gender or race play any role in your ability to get a concussion?
Not necessarily in the ability to get a concussion. Definitely there are some different gender roles and race roles that could play in what you were doing and cause a concussion. For example, boys are more likely to be in a sport that has more physical activity and head trauma available. And yeah.
So
Anything
there's
else?
no like certain races are not more susceptible, because I know that in the movie Concussion they were pandering as if the African American community was more susceptible, like 70% more likely to receive a concussion than white or Caucasian in the NFL. So I was just curious if there was any data or anything to back that up, or if it was just agenda that was in the movie.
I didn't come across any data proving that. I do know that the amount of African Americans who play football, there are more than there are Caucasians, so that might play a role in why you're seeing that variation. All right, guys, thanks a lot.
I love you.